I'm happy to nominate Councillor Nick Hawler, Chair.
Second it.
Thank you, members. The rest of the committee in agreement with that, for Councillor Hawler to take the chair? Thank you, members. Thank you, Councillor.
So, good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to this hybrid meeting, the Prosperous Communities Overview Scrutiny Committee, which is open to the press and the public. The meeting will be broadcasted live, and a recording of this meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting is concluded. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings, and I've had no request for people to speak today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please, can members refrain from using the chat function instead of the raise hand icon indicated when you want to speak? And please remember to keep your microphone muted when you're not talking, and please do not interrupt discussions until you've been notified of your intention to speak and have been invited to do so. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda 1, welcome and apologies. Chris, do we have any apologies?
We do, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Mark Jones and Nathan Yole.
Thank you. Agenda 2. Rebecca, could we run through the declarations of interest?
Thank you, Chair. I haven't received any notification from members in advance as to any declarations they may have, but if you have any now, can you verbally declare them, or if you think of anything during discussions, please declare them at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 3. Members, are you reminded that there are minutes of the meeting to scrutinise the British. Could you please state whether you have anything to raise in relation to these minutes? If not, I will take them as agreed. So that's agreed? Yes? Thank you. Agenda item 4, action sheet. Rebecca, could you please run through the action sheet?
Thank you, Chair. So there are 2 actions listed on the action sheet there for consideration. The second one is the recommendations from the last session, which you will have received the responses to. So unless members have any questions on those or feedback, feel free to email me if you do. And the first one there is members requested that at the last council a seminar in the new council year involving partner agencies that work with us to prevent and address serious violent crime in Torfaen. Kate is actually here today, so if you do have any questions, but there was a delay in bringing that legislation in, but I do believe, Kate, now we can look for a date to hold up for members.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, please. Sorry, we're just trying to get a microphone working in the chamber.
Is it not working?
Morning.
Good morning, Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, with regards to the serious violence prevention duty, there was a delay from government in enacting the duty, so that was delayed till January the 31st. So the team are working in partnership now with Gwent Police and the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner to ensure that we're in a position to enact the duty and follow that through. So what we'll do now that's been formally enacted is that we'll set a date for members to attend a member seminar, and we'll ask our partners within Gwent Police and other agencies to join the member seminar. So as soon as we've got a date for that, then we can inform members, but that should be hopefully within the next month-ish or so. Thanks.
Thank you, Kate. Agenda item 5, mapping. I'd like to welcome Kate Williams, Public Service Support Unit, Kath Jones, Anti-Social Behaviour Reduction Coordinator, and Councillor Peter Jones, Executive Member for Corporate Guidance and Performance, who will be introducing this report today. We also welcome Shane Wrigley, who is the Crime and Disorder Reduction Officer for Gwent Police. Now I hand over to the officers, and Councillor Jones to give us a brief introduction of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to say a huge amount because I'm sure Kate's going to go into a great detail. From my perspective, I'm a huge fan of this process. Recently, our chief exec has said in our new county plan that one of the big issues for Torfaen is that all children need to thrive. A particular cohort of children are children that can get involved in antisocial behaviour. This process tries to identify them early. It's a tiered approach. Prevention is a key theme, as is partnership working. From my perspective, and I've sat as a magistrate for many years, the last thing we want is children in Torfaen getting involved in the criminal justice system. This process tackles issues early and prevents that. I'm looking forward to listening to officers going into huge detail about this report, and I'm very keen to hear what committee members have got to say and what recommendations they're going to bring forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
That's great. Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Jones, and thanks for your continued support on this. It's much appreciated, and your understanding, I think, of what the team have tried to do to kind of get the MAPI process to where it is today. So we wanted to bring this report to scrutiny. MAPI meetings have been running since 2014, but lots has happened since that. So we've had to kind of redevelop the programme. You know, we've had COVID. There's been lots of different things that have kind of got in the way since then. But we thought we really wanted to bring this to scrutiny today, just to see, is there anything that we can kind of improve on the process? If there's anything is there anything missing? So really, we just wanted to the report provide you with an overview of the MAPI process, its aims and how it's being delivered throughout the borough. We wanted to bring to your attention the impact that the MAPI process is having, a really positive impact on children in primary school and secondary schools, really trying to break the cycle of getting involved in antisocial behaviour or crime and disorder, and inevitably entering the criminal justice system is the end goal on that. But what we really would like to discuss with you then is, are there any potential gaps within the service that we need to sort of we need to fill, and if there's any further development that you think that we could do to improve the process and identify any possible barriers that we have to doing that. And as the Chair introduced herself, Kate Williams worked within the Public Services Support Unit, and Kath Jones is the lead for community safety within the Public Services Support Unit, and PC Sian Wigley is co-located within our team, community safety team, and Sian is the crime and disorder reduction coordinator for Gwent Police, and as I say, working closely with the team. So happy to start with questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. So we have a number of questions prepared, and whilst they're not specifically allocated, can I invite you all to contribute to responses when appropriate, or as appropriate. Rebecca? So that's it, sorry. Yeah, so so we'll go over to the questions. And the first question is, it's on question number 1 is 2.2. It's about the detail to impact MAPI process and having the children and young people, primary and secondary schools in Torfaen through the breaking the cycle, preventing antisocial behaviour and investigation. Lead to individuals, and what leads those individuals to entering the criminal system, and what proportions land up in the criminal justice system?
Okay, so to assess the young people that need to come onto MAPI, so that, you know, we look at the risks around their behaviours on how they could end up in the criminal justice system. ACEs is a massive factor, so adverse childhood experiences, and there's been a lot of research and a big push on tackling adverse childhood experiences for young people to prevent them escalating into the criminal justice system. And that looks at factors such as drug and alcohol abuse at home, domestic violence, lack of appropriate adult, lack of involvement in team sports, which is one of the big drivers of adverse childhood experiences. So that's how we identify those young people at risk. In terms of numbers that we've prevented going into the criminal justice system, I think further down in the report, I can look now, if you give me 2 seconds. Those numbers are in there from MAPI this year, but obviously it was started in 2014, so if members would like me to get that information going back to when we first started, I'm more than happy to do that.
That would be really good. Thank you. So, we'll lead on to question 2, which is coming from Councillor Caroline Price. Thank you.
Yes, my question is to review any potential gaps in service provision and development. What potential gaps are there?
One of the biggest gaps that we find at the moment is lack of intervention services for young children. I'm talking primary school age. We do have the provision with the police service, but a lot of the intervention providers that we use who are trained and based around antisocial behaviour and crime reduction are more focused on age 10 plus. So we have identified that there is a gap in provision for children in primary schools. We're currently doing a mapping exercise, or we will be starting soon, a mapping exercise across the borough to find out what services are available for primary school children that we can bring into MAPI that we can start referring to.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And I think just to add to that, I think the success that the MAPI meetings are having is the more schools that are becoming involved, the more young people that are being referred to us. So there are even more young people that are perhaps on the cusp. And I think the one thing that we're trying to do is really look at prevention. So the earlier that we can get involved with a young person, the less likely they are to further get into our antisocial behaviour reduction system. So I think the more work that we're doing, the more young people that are becoming involved, and the less resources that we kind of have to be able to direct them to appropriate services. So it's a bit of a catch-22, really. I think that the more that we're doing, the more that we're identifying. And I think it's looking at different ways to kind of engage. So I think if there are more interventions available, Positive Futures have been absolutely wonderful, so they can engage in kind of sport. But actually, if there's something that we could refer to that may engage to interest in music or wildlife or something, I think if there was additional resources like that we would be able to link into, that would be really beneficial for all the children.
Thank you, Kate. That leads on to question 3, which is from me. It's about paragraph 3.4. One of the outcomes of the lockdown has seen a negative impact on the behaviours attitudes to many of the young people in our communities. What changes have been seen in the behaviours attitudes of many of the young people, and how have we adapted our services to deal with this impact? It's obviously quite an important question.
Thank you, Councillor. I think the reason that we've seen the change in the behaviours during COVID is because whereas where we have MAPI meetings, we had schools monitoring children and their behaviour and their family life and their school life, we had police, we had our team, we had our partners, we had support agencies. And that cohort of support stopped because the young people weren't in school, they weren't being seen out in the community. So that's then led to an escalation in their behaviours because they haven't had that support package around them. It's been heavily reliant on parents, and without agencies' involvement, we have seen an escalation in the types of behaviour as well. So whereas MAPI, when we originally set it up in 2014, we looked at very low-level antisocial behaviour in the community and then some behaviours in school, we're now looking at a higher level antisocial behaviour, borderline low-level criminality, as the starting point of young people being referred into MAPI. So at the moment, we feel like we're playing catch-up. We didn't have a chance to prevent those young people entering at that level. So we've got a 2-year catch-up period at the moment where we're using all our partners' resources to prevent further escalation. But we're hoping now, MAPI's been back since September last year, that prevention will start. So once we deal with these 2 years, that hopefully those behaviours won't happen in the future going forward.
Thank you. I've got a couple of friends that are teachers, and they noticed a massive change after the pandemic, where the behaviour changes are going. Is it going back to the normal now, or is it still continuing? Is that age gap of those people that were causing behavioural issues then? Are they going through the system and they haven't been stopped, or is a change going on back to where it was before the pandemic?
I think, you know, I think everyone's mental health was really affected during that, and I think it's a long time for people to you know, to get back to some kind of normal. The normal isn't the same anymore, is it? The goalposts have moved, and I think we're not really going to kind of get back to that kind of, you know, life has kind of changed and life has moved on, people's expectations have kind of changed. So I think the more that what we're looking at is the resources that we need are geared around sort of mental health, around talking, around getting involved in school, around discussing problems, all of those kind of things. So I think people are generally kind of coming out of that and being able to, as I said, yeah, perhaps improve their kind of mental health. But I think it's looking at the prevention side of it, that some of those behaviours have absolutely escalated. So there's probably, like Catherine said, the 2 years of perhaps those individuals have gone further into the system than we would have liked. But absolutely, you know, with everything coming back on board now, we're kind of stopping that trend and bringing that back in, because we're able to do that at an earlier stage. And even though we weren't able to have the meetings and that in school, we did still work with schools within that time, but you were looking more at those causing a lot more problems rather than the lower level ones that we weren't able to kind of engage with at that time. So I think we're definitely seeing it coming back around again more positively, but I still think there's quite a lot of work to do, and as you said, with people in schools and that, they've seen a big difference in that as well.
Okay. So we go on to question 4, Councillor Caroline Price.
Thank you, Chair. The team are no longer just dealing with ASB. Whilst these numbers are small, the cases are extremely complex and resource intensive. Has the capacity within the team increased in order to deal with the county lines and serious violence?
So we haven't had any additional capacity. There are new duties that the team have to adhere to, and the whole of the community safety arena rather than just antisocial behaviour. So the team, we haven't had any additional capacity, but what I would say is that we are very privileged, I think, within Torfaen to have such a robust community safety team. Torfaen have still invested within their community safety teams, whereas some of the neighbouring boroughs, they haven't got the staff and that we have, and what the team can do is unbelievable. I just think the amount of work and pressure that they're under to look at antisocial behaviour, to look at serious violence, to look at all the different things, you know, counter-terrorism, we're looking at domestic homicide reviews. The breadth is absolutely huge, but what I think the team are so dedicated and so capable and enthusiastic and believe in what they're doing, that kind of sees it through. So I think it's sheer determination and hard working of the team that keeps doing this. I mean, we can all ask for extra resources and things like that, but I think we're really, really clever around what we're doing. We've got officers designated to specific areas, so they work across the field with, you know, children, young people, adults, families, in an area. So I think that really kind of helps as well. So we've got 3 officers that look at specific areas, and we have a part-time officer that looks at more of the kind of environmental issues as well. So I think as a team, we, you know, always want more resources, but actually what we do is we target those within need. We're very careful around areas that we work in. We work on evidence. We look at hotspot areas rather than just doing doing anything. We work on demand and we work on need. So I think it really is a lot down to the team to be able to keep it all going. Thanks.
Thank you.
We lean now on to Councillor Nick Byrne with question number 5, please.
Thank you, Chair. Am I coming through?
Yep.
My connection isn't very good. Sorry about that. Good morning. My question is, MAPI takes a child-centred approach to problem solving for ASB reduction, ensuring the needs of the child are at the centre of the interventions. How do we tailor support to the individual child?
Thank you, Councillor. So The whole ethos of MAPI is looking at the root causes of behaviours, and to do that we look at the adverse childhood experiences, so we have to focus on the child. We look at the social interactions, environmental interactions, schools, friendship groups, parents, familial relationships, if there's any links to criminogenic families. We look at their education, attainments, their attendance, their ability and they want to get involved in voluntary school groups, after school groups. We can look at past relationships, we can look at good relationships, bad relationships. So, you know, the child is the absolute focus of everything we do so that we can tailor the right intervention. And because interventions and resources around interventions are so precious to us, we need to make sure we put the right package in place. And they are partnership packages. We don't just, you know, if we identify a young person who likes football, but there's several other risk factors, we try to tailor a package for a young person rather than just a one-off intervention. So that's how we operate, making sure the child is our focus.
Thank you. Are you happy with
Okay,
that?
that's great. Thank you very much.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
So we now lead on to question number 6 that comes from Councillor Cargill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This question relates to sort of paragraph 4.1 in the papers. What interventions have we got in place in terms of the youth service to engage people who are in the MAPI process? Have we got sufficient opportunities for them to engage in? And are we working with the Community Directorate to identify where there may be clusters of young people engaging with MAPI to look at what community provisional prevention could be offered in that area? And I think you've answered in part about some of the... I was particularly drawn to your response on question 1 around ACEs, and one of the triggers there being sort of lacking involvement in team sports and all that sort of stuff. Have we got a link with the youth, a sufficient link with the youth service, and we're encouraging young people in the MAPI process to sort of link in with these opportunities which might help their progression? Thank you.
The short answer is yes. So we do link in with youth services. I know they're centre-based activities now rather than the detached provision that used to go out on the streets and work with young people on the streets. But we've got Positive Futures that do that. They are quite reactive, so they can go out to the groups of young people identified in areas, try and engage with them and get them involved in some local sports. Most of our team are local Torfaen people, and most of us have children ourselves who are linked in with local rugby teams, football teams, swimming teams. So there's lots of links there that we have on a personal level as well as a professional level. I think that's a benefit. But we do find that when we've identified groups of young people, one of the things we're finding is sport is a great tool, and it's great to be involved in a team, but there are other avenues that we would like to explore for young people in terms of, rather than team sports, teams activities, and we use our current partners to look at, you know, those resources and different projects. We can put things in schools to do group activities, and we try and use that to encourage positive friendship groups within schools, because sometimes we find that, you know, there's a bit of a group mentality, and then that leads to antisocial behaviour. But we encourage young people to attend different provisions within schools as well as out of school, and make better friendship groups and then make better choices.
Yeah, Chair, I've got a small supplementary, if you like. Those kind of, and I'm just sort of thinking aloud as I sometimes do in these meetings, in terms of sporting opportunities, is there any provision in place for people from a less privileged background who might not be able to afford kit or boots or, you know, all that sort of stuff? Is there some sort of avenue we can assist people with to enable their involvement in these sorts of activities that are on offer? Because that might be a barrier for young people and their families, yeah?
To be honest, it's something that the team have kind of sort of explored, around that kind of thing. That would possibly be with schools or linking in, as you say, with rugby clubs and different things like that. The interventions that we kind of offer are just across the board. So, for example, if Positive Futures went in, they would just do activities with anybody. And some of the areas that they're working in are those that are perhaps more challenging and less deprived. So they would, bringing in support there. There's lots of things that we're doing as a wider council then, I think, to look at that with cost of living, looking at grants, all of those kind of things that we try to bring in that I think the team are then involved in, that are able to refer. So I think if there are any issues that are identified, especially I think through the one-to-one mentoring that we're doing, if there are those issues then the team have got the right resources to be able to refer them to other agencies or to kind of get support. And I think the build-up now, I think with MAPI in those schools, is that you are looking at those that perhaps are struggling, mental health, the cost of living, all of those things. That child has so much more going on in their lives than they did, a few years ago. But it's bringing those, and it's recognising those that have a bit of a change in behaviour, and that for whatever those reasons. So I think the team are well placed to identify need and then be able to refer to appropriate services, when needed.
Question 7. This is about core partners on paragraph 2. Over the years, do you review the core group? Are there any identified gaps in representation? I've noticed that you have, for example, Bronavon, but you don't have Mellon. And obviously they have a core of parents that have properties in those locations, whether or not actually represented on this panel, on MAPI.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, the reason for that is because Bronavon had projects that our young people could attend and refer to. So rather than them being on there for information sharing and discussions around the young person, it was more about they had something to offer in terms of intervention for young people. All of our housing associations are linked into our ASB process. But whereas we're looking at this as prevention, if there was a need to share information with the housing association, we would do that, and we would discuss cases at our community safety hub, which have all RSLs and other partners involved. But the reason Bronavon and not Mellon on there is simply because they have projects.
Thank you. Right, question number 8 comes from Councillor Nick Byrne.
Hi again. This is question. Do Gwent Police have dedicated officers working within the MAPI, so they actually know the young people, they build relationships with them, and the school community and the appropriate interventions?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So there's community support officers for each area attend the MAPI meetings, so they do have those links with the young people. They know the ones that are out about in the community causing problems, so the information they share is vital in the MAPI meetings. And it's great for the police then to also see the reasons why these young people are involved in their behaviour, what's going on at home, what's going on in their lives, so that they then have a better understanding when dealing with them. I'm not sure if Sean would like to come in.
Good morning. I have involvement with, so I've had some involvement with MAPI and obviously in the broader community safety team as well. If from my perspective, I don't attend every meeting, and I link in them with the CSOs, and I do receive the minutes and then cross-reference it with ongoing issues within the community that I overview. What I would like to say is if the MAPI is working effectively as it's beginning to, since COVID has come to an end, well, COVID lockdown and everything's come to an end. Now that's starting to work correctly. I'm seeing a significant drop in the impact of the children that come from MAPI committing any offences within the community. So the MAPI, now that it's up and running, all guns blazing, as it were, I found definitely the knock-on effect is definitely reduced due to the great work of the MAPI. The community safety team are definitely like the swift army knife of Torfaen. From a cadro perspective, I link in with other Gwent cadros as well. They don't have anything like this in place. The mappies, I believe Kath was trying to push that out Gwent-wide when she was in her previous role, but they are significantly behind Torfaen, and I would just like to say Torfaen are leaps and bounds in front of other areas, and I just like to commend them on their work and the reduction in the impact of my job dealing with those in the community as well. I've definitely seen after when the lockdown ended, youth that we've never had any dealings with on any front, all of a sudden being 100 miles an hour within the community without the interventions, and we're still dealing with the ramifications of that through the hub and through the meetings we've had. We've got ASBIs going on, community behavioural orders from my perspective. But now that MAPI's back in place, I've definitely seen a massive decline in the workload that has come in my way from the community, and in generally within the crime rates as well.
Okay, does that answer your question, Nick? I know from my point of view it's a really positive reply.
Yeah, definitely. That's good to know, and let's hope that continues.
Sorry. We now lead on to question number 9 that comes from Councillor Liam Cowles.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 4.5 of the report details feedback received from schools, but do we seek feedback from the families and the young people that are involved in the MAPI process?
In a short answer, no. I think that is something that we absolutely need to look at. We talk to schools, we talk to that. I think when we're involved with the young person, perhaps, and it's gone on to a further intervention, for example, restorative justice, there's lots of feedback on how that has kind of impacted. But I think, especially within the new directorate with communities and, Stephen Vickers as chief exec, one of the things that we really are trying to focus on now is impact. What is the impact that we're having, and how are we measuring that? So absolutely, I really think from this, one of the things that we need to kind of enhance and work on is how are we measuring that impact? We could say, well, crime has reduced, antisocial behaviour has reduced, but the actual impact on that child and that family, what difference has it made to them? We absolutely need to kind of go one further to find out that, to see what the effect, we know whether their attendance has improved, whether their behaviour has improved, but that's from third parties like education, Gwent Police, other partners may have seen that impact. But I definitely think there's so much more that we need to do now of measuring the impact on that child and on that family. So that is definitely something we want to work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so we now go on to question number 10 that comes from Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, all the comprehensives are signed up to MAPI, but apparently only 13 of 26 primary schools are engaged to date. Is this a case of those schools not wishing to become involved, or is it a resource issue for us in terms of team capacity to reach those schools and sort of get them engaged in the MAPI process?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So pre-COVID, every school in Torfaen was engaged in MAPI, every primary school. And the way we hold the primary school meetings is they're cluster meetings. So we don't have individual primary schools. We'll have 3 primary schools that feed into, say, Aberystwyth Comprehensive or Cwmbran, for example, and that's how they're set. We didn't start going out to primary schools until December, January time to look at MAPI, because we put so much time and effort into the comprehensive schools. So efforts are being made to engage with every school. I think every primary school's now had an email. It's just a matter of the team having the time to now chase that up and get those meetings up and running.
Chair, if I could supplement, I welcome that answer and thank you for that. I think it's important that we do carry out that work, because behaviour escalates, doesn't it? And let's catch them young while that behaviour is kind of at a lower level, and we can do more to address it then before it escalates through the comprehensive system, if you like. Thank you.
I think just going back to your earlier point, what we need to do then is build on the positivity that's happened in other schools. So I think, you know, that those clusters that perhaps aren't involved, if they can see the impact that that's having on that child, on the school, on other people in the class, on that family, if we can kind of get out some of those good news stories, look at those positive case studies where MAPI has had this intervention, then I think, you know, pre-COVID, that you'd have kind of schools trying to bite your hand off to just say, well, you know, come into my school. So we need to demonstrate further then what it is that it can be offered, rather than thinking, is this another meeting? So I think we need to be a bit more savvy around what we're doing around our communication levels to kind of go in and do this. So I think lots of schools are signed up, but I think once they see the benefits that the other schools are having and the impact that that's having on the young person and their school, then I think that will give us a bit more in. So I think there's a bit more for us to do around the case studies to get those schools on board. Thanks.
Councillor Gordon has another question for you.
It's me again, Chair. Thank you. This question relates to 4.7 in the sort of report. How does the MAPI link in with the Community Safety Hub? Does it work collaboratively, or are there lots of projects kind of working in silos, potentially duplicating some work? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So the team are the leads on MAPI, the team are the leads on the hub. So they sit on both meetings. The children that are discussed at MAPI are more of our prevention, whereas the children and young people discussed at hub are more on our strike process. So those processes sit differently. MAPI is pre-strike, and then strike is pre-criminal, and hub discusses those in the strike process and pre-criminal. MAPI is our prevention. However, if there are concerns that need to be discussed at hub in terms of a young person, that's on MAPI, they can be. But the partners that sit on hub are also on MAPI, because it's the same interventions for those on MAPI as those on the strike process. But it's not a duplication, because the cases and the individuals are different people.
Question 12 comes from Councillor Liam Counts.
Sorry, I was on mute then. Thank you, Chair. In relation to paragraph 4.11 of the report, out of the total of 74 young people on MAPI, 12 have escalated to the ASB and 4 to the strike process due to a lack of engagement in the voluntary interventions offered. So what do we do to encourage engagement, and what more can be done to encourage this engagement?
Yeah, so everything we offer, as governed by our legislation, is voluntary. There is nothing, we can't force anyone's hand to do anything. And if anybody wants to change their behaviour, they need to make that choice themselves. We've got court orders that we can use when it comes to needing to protect the community from antisocial behaviour. But in terms of encouraging young people to engage in the voluntary interventions, all we can do is encourage. As I say, they are voluntary. We do have mentors now within a project within the team who can spend more one-to-one time with the young person to encourage them to engage in different interventions where maybe they haven't had an appropriate adult in the past, encouraging them to make those positive choices and get involved in more positive activity. So for our young people who go on to strike, because they haven't engaged in voluntary interventions, we will automatically refer them to the mentoring, which again is voluntary, but it is a more intensive level of support.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so question number 13 is Councillor Carl Gordon.
Question 13 relates to 4.13 in the report. It says data is gathered at the end of each quarter to measure against the multi-agency outcome. Can you talk the committee through who is responsible for monitoring this data? How are issues identified in the data flagged up? And how do we ensure that progress and positive outcomes are achieved? Relating to the point you made earlier, Kate, about we don't really speak to the child and the parent to see what the outcomes are. and where you said, and another answer to a question about the primaries, are we role modelling our successes? So how do we, if we're not getting those positive outcomes from parent and child, or guardian and child, what positive news are we bringing to engage the other primary schools and whatever? So how are we testing outcomes? Are we just using anecdotal evidence, or is it sort of more sort of qualitative assessment of outcomes achieved through the process? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So in terms of monitoring the data, it's monitored by the team, and how we measure our success is through the BRAG rating, so the blue, red, amber, green rating of a young person on MAPI. And ultimate aim is to get everyone down to green and off. So you don't sit on MAPI for a period of time if you're not involved in antisocial behaviour or if the risk has been managed. So at the moment, that's how we monitor our successes. And in terms of speaking to families and young people on successes, our role within MAPI is a coordination of other services to avoid duplication, to ensure there's information sharing, and to ensure a joined-up, child-centred approach. So whilst other services are probably having the conversations with the families on the impact that service has had, the role of the MAPI is to make sure that those services are hitting the right people. But again, it's something that we can look at about getting that feedback and getting some more, some positive case studies that we can then share across the other primary schools and other agencies. It's all about joined up partnership working, and the MAPI model, I've had people asking me questions from various different agencies around the whole ethos of it and, the child-centred approach. And, this model's been shared with other partners for them to adapt to use in their services. So if we just think of MAPI as the coordination model, it's the role then of my team to make sure that those services are joined up and coordinated to ensure the child-centred approach.
Could I add to that? And just, I think one of the things that we're looking at of working across the council is looking at data. How are we sharing data better? Do we share? We all have a different system. We have our system. Does it talk to that system? And I think a piece of work that was being done before Christmas was looking at those children that weren't in school. Were they on a modified timetable? Were they excluded? Where is that person? Who knows where that child is? How are they not being drawn into criminal activity? What's, safeguarding, all of those things. So I think there's a huge piece of work going on as a wider council to make sure that we're looking at that whole journey of the child, and we've all got a bit of a snapshot of that child. So when they leave our system, that's absolutely great. They're not in criminality. But actually, how's their mental health? Are they doing something in school? Have they gone on? Are they within NEETs? All of those things that I think there's a wider piece of work going on that we're heavily involved in. We need to look at that whole journey of the child. So if we prevented them entering the criminal justice system, that's great. But have they then, because of our interventions that we've been able to put in, left school and gone on to college or university, or have they done this? So I think there's a whole bigger picture here that we're a part of, but I think we need to link in, I think, of that data and that mapping around what we're, sorry, I'm being called a sec, of what we're doing to look at that bigger picture and just to know the impact that we're having. So thanks.
That's really positive. Thank you, Chair.
So the next question is question number 14. It comes from me. At present, we have a limited number of young people that MAPI can accommodate based on the capacity of the team and access for interventions and limited funding. Today, we've kind of discussed the success story of MAPI over the last 8 years, which I do commend you guys for because it is a brilliant project. But how do we prioritise the young people that enter MAPI? Is there scope in capacity within the team? I get that you are busy guys. And is there any way of seeking any other streams of funding to help you?
I think one of the things that we always start off is prevention. We look at those on the cusp of offending that might be getting involved, and then that moves on a bit. So we're always trying to look at the new kind of prevention because are we joining too late, which is why we started the MAPI meetings in secondary schools, and within no time at all we're too late. This is, these young people are fully entrenched, their behaviours, we need to get in there earlier. So I think what, we haven't kind of got capacity, I think, to talk about, you could talk about every child that might have a bit of an issue coming in. So there isn't enough capacity, I think, within the team to look at every child that may be coming into this. So I think, what it's hoped when working with the schools is that the teachers, the support staff, the school liaison officers are picking up these, so that we've got some other kind of interventions and other agencies that are able to support at that lower end of the scale. But I definitely think there is more scope to be looking at those additional young people on MAPI. But we secured some funding through the Safer Streets 4. We're looking at other funding avenues to look at sort of preventions and interventions. And I think MAPI is well placed to identify some of those additional young people in the community that may need the lower interventions. Can we work with a play service to look at family support of an issue that might be in the thing? So I think it's being quite savvy around where we're referring young people to. But that if we were to do this and enhance the work that we're doing, we would be working, I think, with more young people at an earlier stage every time. So.
Yeah, and sorry, Chair, if I can just come in as well. We are the community safety team. Our outcomes need to be reducing young people into the criminal justice system. Excuse me. So our framework has to be set up around identifying young people at risk of antisocial behaviour. Where the numbers of MAPI, sometimes schools are asking for all these different children to be discussed. They're more social concerns, social welfare concerns. So it's linking in closer then with Families First, with our colleagues in social services, to make sure that preemptive work is done first, to try and prevent any risk then for antisocial behaviour. So we are working with our partners at a lower level, but it's not the names that we can discuss on MAPI, because there's no risk of antisocial behaviour at present.
So, question 16 comes from Councillor Gordon.
I think it's 15, Chair. No problem. I mean, this question has effectively become a supplementary to the last one, if you like. In 415 on the report, it says an example of low-level behaviour would be a young person who started to become challenging in school. The question is, are schools sufficiently well equipped to identify when a child needs referring to the MAPI scheme? Are schools too quick to pass on the issue? And when does it move from a school issue to a MAPI issue, and what are the kind of the trigger points where a school would refer a child under the scheme? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So within our framework, there does need to be an element of concern in school and in the community. And again, where schools are seeing children displaying challenging behaviour, our team offers them support through advice and guidance, support from other services. We have to have an element of antisocial behaviour within the community as well, just to be meeting our thresholds in terms of ASB reduction and reducing first-time entrance into the criminal justice system. But where schools are coming to us with challenging young people who are not causing problems in the community, we are still there to provide support and guidance. And when it comes to making a referral to MAPI, it doesn't have to, every case is different, every need is different. So it's not that a child is misbehaving in school and the community, so he's automatically on, or that they're misbehaving in school and not the community, so he's not on. It all depends on the wider risks. So again, it's taking that child-centred approach. It's going out to other agencies. What do you know about this young person? Is MAPI suitable for them? Do they need different support? So there is a criteria, but every case is judged on its own merit.
And I think to add to that, I think the school have their own referral routes into Positive Futures, into Show Races and the Red Card. There's lots of things that they can refer to a single agency to help. And I think the MAPI process is a multi-agency approach. So we're looking at possibly interventions from Gwent Police, from Youth Service, from Positive. You know, we're looking at that coordinated approach. Whereas there could be a need for an individual that needs mental health support. They may need a CAMS referral. So the school have to kind of make those individual referrals to a one service. But I think when it becomes a bit more complex and there are other issues that kind of come in, that's when the sort of community safety kind of element comes in to just say, well, there are bigger things at play here. We need to kind of look at the antisocial behaviour element, look at the potential links to crime if they've got an older sibling that may have been drawn into crime, that they're worried about other factors. And I think that's when it kind of comes in. So I think the team need to be quite careful with the numbers that they're dealing with, because you could just look at every child and just go, right, you know, there is something that we could put in for that, but actually there is responsibility, I think, from the school to refer to single agencies, but when it comes to multi-agency, that's when it needs to come into our arena.
Chair, for me. Yeah, again, that's really helpful and informative. Thank you. I mean, mental health, as an example, you know, could escalate, couldn't it? Along with a variety of other factors into antisocial behaviour or whatever. Are we confident then, at a lower level than the MAPI process, that we've got sufficient things going on in schools and whatever to identify these issues at an early stage? Because obviously escalation is the problem, isn't it? Which is why I made the point about primary schools. Let's get in there and identify potential risks really early, because I would imagine they're far easier to address than until they've escalated to the point where where a child is displaying challenging behaviours in school and is starting to become a, you know, menace, if you like, in the wider community.
I think that's right. Within the MAPI meetings themselves, those partners that are around the table that can offer services, I think, play a huge role. So I think that the more partners you've got that are able to, you know, that we're able to refer into services like that, the better. But they need to kind of be around the table to be able to do that. So although that we're looking at kind of problem solving, if we don't know where we can refer that young person to or what support is out there, then we're not going to be able to tackle that issue. And I think Catherine mentioned earlier, one of the things that we're trying to do is carry out a bit of a review of what services are out there. There's lots of voluntary organisations that we're not linked into. There's lots, I think, available that we're not aware of. And I think we need to have, you know, a toolkit then of things that we're able to refer young people to that may not necessarily be in our system, but to prevent them coming into our system if this work was done within schools or the community, you know, community councils, lots of different avenues I think there is. So I think there's a bigger piece of work to be done around mapping services and what's available. Are they funded? Is there resource issues? So I think there's more to be done at that, especially around the kind of mental health services available to young people at the earliest stage, rather than trying to wait for a CAMS referral. It's those, you know, talking in school and stuff like that.
I think without preempting our sort of discussions at the tail end of this meeting, once you're not in the room, that the very issue you've described there might become one of the recommendations that we'll look at. Yeah, thank you. It's helpful.
So, Councillor Carl Gordon answers number 6. Is you again?
It's me again. Sorry, I'm hogging it. I don't mean to. 4.16 in the report, where funding has been sought for some of the interventions, such as Positive Futures and mentoring. This is grant funding and not long-term. Where is the grant funding sourced? Are we exploring alternative funding streams that are longer term to support some of these interventions, and or could we look to fund from our existing budgets?
So some of the avenues that we have funding for are from the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner. We have funding through Welsh Government under Children and Communities Grant. We've got funding under Safer Streets. We've got funding under the Shared Prosperity Fund. they're all short term. There is nothing kind of long term, and that the only long term funding that we have are core staff that are funded through the local authority to kind of carry out a lot of this work, and that includes staff within our team, play service, youth service, positive futures, that are able to do a lot of that work. Funding is an issue. You know, we're looking at trying to maintain staff that are on a funded post. Welsh Government haven't come out to say that that will definitely be continued. We think it is, so staff look for other posts. You know, staff retention, that some of the individuals that work with these young people are phenomenal. You don't want to lose them. But that is an issue of long-term funding, and I think that's across the board, really. So we're always looking at new ways to find new funding, but often you'll find that it has to be new and innovative, and we think we don't need new and innovative. We want this, we know what works, we want interventions, one-to-one, we don't need anything new and shiny, we just need more of the same and for that to continue. And a lot of the young people that engage in these programmes, the last thing we want to do to say was a 6-month funded programme, you can't have anything after that. That would be the worst thing that we could do then. So that is an issue, long-term funding, and I haven't got an answer for that. It would, it'd be, I think with the resource that the council kind of puts in a lot to prevention, and I think more so now within the new directorate, is really looking at prevention intervention services, of how we can kind of work better, how we can align services and work better with other agencies to make sure that we're targeting the right areas and the right young people, so we can work better at doing that. But funding is always a bit of an issue. Thanks.
Right. So question 17 comes from me. It's the last question. Kate, you've actually mentioned some of what this question is about. There's not a consistent link, as you said earlier, about the council for sharing information. Why is this? Is it a feasible option to create a shared database, and these issues around data sharing would make it unviable? And I know that you've touched on it before, but it's obviously an important question. It's a question that working within everybody in the resources, that you get the up-to-date information when you need it, and to go through databases is a lot harder than looking through spreadsheets. Is a lot harder than having a database. This is something that I get that you are moving forward with it, but how far are you actually moving forward with it?
So, thanks for that. Would absolutely welcome that kind of being a recommendation from this, is to explore that further. That is something that we need to do better and link up. All the information is there. We don't have any issues with gaining that information, because a lot of the work that we do is under Section 115 of the Crime and Disorder Act, so that allows for the free and open disclosure of confidential information under that caveat. So we're able to do that with everyone that's signed up. We have a WASPI agreement that we're just renewing now, which is the Wales Accord of Sharing Protective Information, Personal Information. So we're renewing that. So we have lots of ways that we are able to share information, and I don't think it's a barrier around partners not sharing information. We very rarely come to a meeting and somebody says, "Oh, I'm not sharing that information." People see that we are trying to detect and prevent crime, so the free share of information is great under that. But I think it's just those linking in. We have a link into the social services website, but you may not to the database, but it may not be the same as the education database. So going back to that wider conversation that I know that the strategic directors are having, is there a system that can incorporate all of that we can all feed into the same system? So that would be, fantastic that other people have access to information around that, and that would be quite resourceful as well, because we're not duplicating, trying to find information from different areas. So, we will continue kind of working with that, but, we'd be happy to receive further recommendations on that.
Thank you. So I'd like to thank Kath, Kate, Councillor Jones and Sean, and you are free to leave. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Members, can I remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I'm going a bit faster than I should be.
No, I just wanted to, thank you for taking the time you know, those in person and those online for giving us the opportunity to talk about MAPI and, you know, raising its profile. I'm hoping that that's kind of done a little bit of that today, and we'll just really look forward to hearing your recommendations, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Members, can I remind you that the meeting is still in formal proceedings and therefore we are still being webcast. Members, can I refer you now to the scrutiny activity and invite you to offer your recommendations. I'm handing over to Rebecca, who will formulate the recommendations. Can we start?
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just draw members' attention to the scrutiny activity, which was asking you to determine whether the MAPI process is having a positive impact on children in primary and secondary schools in Torfaen in breaking the cycle of preventing antisocial behaviour and escalation into crime and disorder, and then asking you to make any recommendations to the executive member. So first off, can I ask whether as a committee you agree or you're satisfied that the MAPI process is having a positive impact?
If I may, yes, I am satisfied with the answers that's been given today. It's been really helpful. However, I want some sort of process of sort of checks and balances as well, wherever we can. And I know it's not an exact science dealing with sort of children and young people who sort of, potential for sort of criminal activity further down the line. I know it's not an exact science, but there doesn't seem to be any feedback or success stories. You know, not that you can put this in a graph, okay? Because we have partial successes and we have partial failures, and that's the nature of this activity that we carry out. But I think there's got to be more scrutiny in terms of how well things are progressing. It seems fairly nebulous to me. I don't deny for a second there's amazing work going on with all the partners, and they're really impacting children and young people's lives. But I'd want to see some meat on those bones, really, a sort of reporting back process to the wider sort of community team or whoever it is, or this committee, you know. I'm not sure what that looks like, but
I just wonder how much, if your child is not in that situation to be using MAPI, how many people are actually aware of what's going on around it, and should there be a little bit more published documentation into communities? Because we all talk about communities and the situation when nothing's going on, but we know as councillors that there's lots going on behind the back scenes. And right now, there are people that probably don't know about MAPI because they haven't got children that are involved in the process. And it would be good to actually tell people that we are one of the leading councils doing this type of work around. We should shout what we'll be doing. Liam, do you have anything?
Just follow on what Carl said and what you've said, Chair. I think an obvious recommendation arises out of the question I asked, which is to start obtaining regular feedback from the children that are involved in this process, the young people that are involved in this process, and the families that have been involved in this process. Because I agree with Carl, we need to see some real-life case studies here and some success stories. It is nebulous at the minute, and we're not getting that, and I think that's an obvious recommendation, and one that, to be fair, the officers seem keen to be taken forward as well. So that's certainly a recommendation that needs to come out of this committee, I think.
the other one, Chair, to focus on is funding, longer-term funding as well. If we've only got short-term funding to carry on this work, can we look at the sort of feasibility exercise of whether we can include more of this work into the council's core funding, so it doesn't have to rely on grant funding from elsewhere. And the points that Kate made about sort of the transient nature of staff, if you're on a sort of one-year funded project and you're doing a great job, but, you know, you still have to pay the mortgage longer term. So if there's, you know, fluidity in whether we can secure the funding for longer term employment for the workforce, they're going to look for something else. You know, there are recruitment and retention problems in this, aren't we? And I think the nature of the work the people in MAPI are carrying out is about building longer term relationships. And can we do that on a sort of short grant funded basis? I don't think that lends itself to the nature of the work that we want to be carrying out.
I kind of think that Stephen Vickers is talking about this in many ways right now, and it should be more brought into the fold and where we are and how we move forward with it. It is more important, as you know, this is going to affect long term. If we can nip the issues that these children are having at the bud, then we're not going to have long-term problems within our communities.
Can I also add a further one into the mix? It relates to a question I made about the sort of engagement, you know, the sort of intervention opportunities we've got. It's not always police or social services. I think we need to be utilising the sort of youth service a bit more in this, and it's a bit sort of, I don't want to be sort of bring back sort of national service or anything, because that's not me. And despite my looks, I didn't do national service. But a distraction for young people, and particularly taken with the sort of the sporting stuff, you know, life skills stuff, the Hab in Blaenavon and all the stuff they do. Can we access that? Can we do a review of what we've got? What's on offer? Are there any shortfalls? And I mean, and if children and young people aren't engaging in that because it's not cool enough for them, what other stuff have we got in place? Because there is a sort of, you know, there's a cost of living crisis, there's a societal crisis, you know, and familial issues, and kids just want to get out of the house. If they just want to get out of the house because there's problems at home, what are they going to do? So we need to put in place something for them to do, an offer for them to come and play a sport or a board game or a whatever, or just have a chat with friends, or learn how to bake a loaf of bread, or whatever it is, right? Because if that stuff's not in place, they go around scratching cars or smashing bottles or knocking on doors or whatever. So, you know, it's easy to blame children and young people for antisocial behaviour, but what is their alternative?
There's also the fact that the interaction with the community councils that's the engagement with the community councils. You know, Blaenavon is doing a tremendous job in engaging with the community in different aspects, and if there are things within the remit of MAPI that could be involving community councils, I think it could be very useful, because the community councils are engaging with the communities, and if there's issues that could be helped within it, I don't know if Liam would like to come in on that one. Yeah,
no, you're right. I think the town council have been involved with a bit of restorative justice, especially when the crib a couple of Christmases ago got damaged. So the engagement with community councils is something that could be included in. Because it went really well, that restorative justice process. It really did, and I think, you know, that they could get involved in this process as well. Yeah, I completely agree with your comments, Chair.
Okay. I've got one. It's the last one we spoke about. It's about the inconsistent link between sharing information. I get that Kate was really asking for that to be a recommendation, that we can move forward and to get some consistency engagement between all the partners within MAPI. And I think if that's something that Kate was really asking for, that really should be placed within the recommendation. Yeah.
Thank you, members. So, yeah, you've covered off pretty much all the points that I'd made. The only other one that I noted was the one, and it's it's linked to the recommendation you made, Councillor Gordon, with, in terms of seeing impact. And they did mention that about doing more on making developing case studies to demonstrate amongst other schools the positive impact that it's had in schools, so that they can see the positive work, and it will encourage more schools to get involved because they'll be able to see the benefits of the mapping process. But I think that's the only additional one I want to share.
Excellent.
So do we have anything else, or are we happy with all the recommendations we have now? Because I think we've got a quite comprehensive, large list of comprehensive. So, agenda item number 6 can we introduce, can you introduce the next report, Rebecca? Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the report where you consider the item for scrutiny at the next meeting. Now, we did discuss this as a committee in the previous meeting because there were a number of floating items you had left in your basket. There's no exec decisions that are coming up that are relevant to this committee, and there were no audit referrals. So again, it is just relating to your basket of items, and you did agree at the last meeting that you would consider the food resilience report. So if members are still happy with that, we'll proceed with that as the next item.
Happy to proceed with that, thank you.
Yeah.
Agenda item 7, date of the next meeting. So the next date of the next meeting is 11th of May. I thank everybody for attendance and contributions, and we will now close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. It's been really good.
Thank you, Chair.